Hello everyone and a very warm welcome to another lesson. In this lesson, we are going to learn when we use will in English. We are going to learn how to use will in English. Now, for you to be able to use will correctly, there are some rules that you can follow. Rule number 1. Use will to ask a question. If the question is a request, add please. So, if you want to ask a question in English, you can use will to ask that question. But if the question is a request, you want to request someone to do something, then ensure that you add please at the end of the question, because that makes it polite. Now, how do you apply that rule? Example 1a. Will you shut the door, please? Will you shut the door, please? Example B. Will you carry this for me, please? Will you carry this for me, please? Now, in both examples A and B, we have used please at the end of the question because we are asking for someone to do something for us. It is a request. Will you shut the door, please? In that question, you want someone to close the door. Now, if you don't add please, then it is a command and it is extremely rude to say, will you shut the door? That's a command. So to make it polite, you add please. Will you carry this for me, please? Will you carry this for me, please? Now, if you say, will you carry this for me? That's rude. That's a command. So add please to make it polite. So those two are examples of questions that you ask to request someone to do something for you. Let's move on to examples 1c. Will the mechanic call you later today? Will the mechanic call you later today? Example D. Will the exams begin next week? Will the exams begin next week? Now, in example C and D, you're simply asking a question. You're asking for information. Okay? You're asking for information. In examples A and B, you're asking someone to do something. It is a request. But in examples C and D, you simply want some information. Will the mechanic call you later today? Will the mechanic call you later today? You want to know whether the mechanic who is repairing the car is going to call you later today. Will the mechanic call you later today? Imagine that your husband has taken the car to be repaired in the garage, and then he comes back home and you're the wife and you ask him, are you going to collect the car today? And your husband says, I'm not very sure. And then you ask your husband, will the mechanic call you later today? Okay, so you simply want to know whether the mechanic will call your husband so that he can go and collect the car from the garage. Will the exams begin next week? Will the exams begin next week? Now, you're asking maybe your classmates or your college mates, you want to know whether the exams will begin next week. Okay, so in both C and D, you're simply asking for information, but in A and B, you're asking someone to do something for you. Okay, now let's move on to rule number 2. Use will to make a promise that you're going to do something. So use will to make a promise that you're going to do something. So you want to promise somebody that you're going to do something. To do that, use will. How do you apply that rule? Let's look at examples 2. 2a. I will call you tomorrow fasting in the morning. I will call you tomorrow fasting in the morning. That question mark should not be there. It's not a question. It is a promise. I will call you tomorrow morning fasting in the morning. I will call you tomorrow fasting in the morning. You're making a promise. You're promising somebody that tomorrow fasting in the morning, I'm going to call you. Example B. I will give you a lift after the party. I will give you a lift after the party. Now, you're promising somebody that at the end of the party, once the party is finished, then you're going to give them a lift. You're going to bring them home with your car. I will give you a lift after the party. So they don't have to worry about how they will get back home. They don't have to call a taxi. They don't have to worry about transport at all, because you will give them a lift after the party and you've made it a promise. Okay? Now, example 2c. We will come and visit you next week. We will come and visit you next week. Now, in this case, you're making a promise. You're making a promise that next week you will go and visit. We will come and visit you next week. So you have an appointment, okay? You have an appointment because you promised that you're going to call them next week. Okay, so if you want to make a promise, then use will. Rule number 3. Use will in a conditional sentence. Use will in a conditional sentence. A. To make a promise about the future. To make a promise about the future. Some examples. 3a. I will call you later if I have a free afternoon. I will call you later if I have a free afternoon. So you're making a promise about what you're going to do in the future, but it's conditional. That means that it's dependent on something else. So for you to do A, B must also be successful. For you to do A, then B must be possible. And that is, I will call you later if I have a free afternoon. If I have a free afternoon, I will call you later. But if I don't have a free afternoon, then I will not call you. Okay, so in this case, you're making a promise about the future, but it is dependent on whether something else happens. I will call you later if I have a free afternoon. The next example, we will come and visit you tomorrow unless you're too busy. We will come and visit you tomorrow unless you're too busy. In that sentence, you are making a promise to go and visit someone, but it's on condition that the person is not too busy. Okay? So you will visit the person on condition that they are not too busy. If they are too busy, then you will not go and visit them. So you're making a promise about the future, but it is conditional. On condition that I am not too busy, then I will come and visit you tomorrow. On condition that I have a free afternoon, then I will call you later. The next example, Jack will cook dinner tonight unless he returns back late. Jack will cook dinner tonight unless he returns back late. Now, in that sentence, the fact that Jack will cook dinner depends on whether he returns back late. If he returns back late, then he will not cook dinner. Okay, so Jack cooking dinner depends on whether he will return back late. So you're making a promise about the future, but it is dependent on something else. Now, use will in a conditional sentence B to give someone advice. You can use will in a conditional sentence to give someone advice. And a conditional sentence is where one thing depends on another thing happening. And usually with conditional sentences, we use if, unless, but, and so on. Okay? Now, so if you want to give someone advice, then use will in a conditional sentence. And how do you do that? Let's look at examples 3b. Daniel will help you if you ask him. Daniel will help you if you ask him. So you're giving someone advice, but the advice you're giving them is also conditional. That is, if you ask him, Daniel will help you. But if you don't ask him, then he will not help you. So Daniel will help you if you ask him. The next one, the doctor will do further tests if you want that. The doctor will do further tests if you want that. So if you want that, the doctor will do further tests. So the doctor will do further tests on condition that that is what you want. The doctor will do further tests on condition that that is what you want. If that's not what you want, then the doctor will not do further tests. The next example, she will give you some advice if you need it. She will give you some advice if you need it. So in that sentence, once more, if you need the advice, then she will give you some advice. If you need it, she will give you some advice. But if you don't need it, then she will not give you any advice. So use will in a conditional sentence when you want to give someone advice to do something. And all those sentences are conditional sentences because we have used if. If is what shows that it is a conditional sentence because it means one thing is dependent on another. Something will happen if something else happens. Now, 3c. Use will in a conditional sentence to say that. Use will in a conditional sentence to say what we think will happen in the future. Use will in a conditional sentence to say what we think will happen in the future. Now, let's look at some examples. Example 3c. You will not be allowed in unless you have a ticket. You will not be allowed in unless you have a ticket. In that sentence, you are explaining to somebody what you think will happen in the future. That if he or she doesn't have a ticket, then she won't be allowed in. Imagine that it's a concert, a music festival or a concert, okay? Or maybe, for example, it's going to watch a film, for example. If you have a ticket, then you're allowed in. So if you don't have a ticket, then you're not allowed in. Now, to express that, use will in a conditional sentence. You will not be allowed in unless you have a ticket. You will not be allowed in unless you have a ticket. The next example, he will not pass the exam unless he studies hard. He will not pass the exam unless he studies harder. So unless he studies harder, he will not pass the exam. unless he studies harder, he will not pass the exam. So him passing the exam in the future depends on whether he is going to study hard. Him passing the exams in the future depends on whether he is going to study hard. And then in the last example, you will get sick if you don't eat healthy food. You will get sick if you don't eat healthy food. If you don't eat healthy food, you will get sick. So in that sentence, you're telling somebody that, look, in the future, you will get sick if you don't eat healthy food. So use will in a conditional sentence to say what you think will happen in the future. Now, you notice that all the examples in 3a, 3b, and 3c, we have the words if, unless, okay? And all these words, or you can also use but, all those words indicate that the sentence is a conditional sentence. And a conditional sentence is a sentence in which one thing depends on another one. I will call you later if I have a free afternoon. If I don't have a free afternoon, then I will not call you, okay? We will come and visit you tomorrow unless you're too busy. If you're too busy, then we will not visit you tomorrow, okay? Jack will cook dinner tonight unless he returns back late. If he returns back late, then he won't cook dinner. So it's a conditional sentence. One thing depends on another one for it to actually take place. Okay? Now, this brings me to the end of this lesson. I hope you now know how to use will in English. I hope you understand the rules, and I do hope that the examples have helped you to understand the rules better. I have also uploaded a video about when we use would in English, because a lot of my students have a problem when it comes to the use of would and will. I have separated the videos. There is one on how to use would in English, and now you have this video on how to use will in English. I hope by the time you have watched both videos, you will not have a problem anymore in regards to how to use will and would correctly in English. Now, thank you very much for watching, and remember to subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and share the video in all your social media platforms, for example, on Facebook. Now, thank you very much, and see you in our next lesson. Bye-bye.